every time a new technology kind of goes through the typical Gartner's hype cycle, this slowdown, quote unquote, is really about filtering and finding the right enduring technology. And I think that this is a good time that leaders can truly show up and not join the hype, but use judgment and use discipline.
In a world where software engineering is not the bottleneck anymore, the amount of code that you can produce is no longer the bottleneck, what's the moat or differentiator for products going forward?
If you work in a competitive area where people can replicate your development, then build your competitive advantage in non-product ways. Have the best sales team, have the best relationships. That's what you have to do.
We're moving faster than we ever have. And there are people who are losing their jobs. I want to encourage you that they will come back. Many companies are simply just slashing because there's uncertainty. When all is said and done, they will need the architects, the people who know the business, to then evolve the operations of the organization. So the job will change, but these opportunities will be recreated over time.
Oji, Ezinne, I'm so excited to have you here. You guys are, like dictionary definition of what you call a power couple. You guys have led product teams at companies like Typeform, Calendly, WP Engine as Chief Product Officer and other leadership roles. I think it's safe to say very few people understand product the way you do. So I'll start off with the difficult question, which is AI is here. Are product managers about to be out of a job?
So the answer is absolutely not. And I think this is, I feel this way categorically across the board, that most of the jobs will stay. Many of the jobs will stay. It's just that the tasks will change, right? I do think that I heard a lot of this late last year. People actually wrote an article around this. Oji and I did, and our partner did. Jobs comprise of tasks, right? And you have a function and then you have your tasks. I do think that in product management, we think about the job in three general categories. Discovery, understanding your customer insights is one bucket. And in that bucket, the big idea is opportunity finding. The second category for product, as we think about it, is what we call the delivery. The engineering piece, the agile manifesto, all the things that we do to deliver a product. And then the third is what we call just go to market, getting it to the customer, and building the feedback loops with which you can then do number one again. So there is so much known. There are so many knowns in the second category, product delivery. So that is where we believe that AI and automation can help. So we know that the speed there, the velocity there has just been improved. However, in the truly understanding a customer, developing insights where judgment is required, which is the first bucket, there'll be operational efficiencies. However, it still requires a level of human touch that I don't think that AI delivers just yet. There will be decisions to be made. There will be insights to be generated, dots to connect, and then also prioritization, judgment, right? And then on the latter part, go to market. That is an orchestration of so many things and so many humans, wherein it is not clear that AI can help there. So the tasks in the middle, which is the product delivery side, I think those will be accelerated. We're seeing code being delivered in so many ways, and people have become superhuman in that area. But in the other areas, I think that AI still has there's a lot of evolution to still occur. So the job is not going away. The tasks and the way you prioritize your day will shift.
Okay, before we move on, a quick message from our friends and partners at Vanta. The right kind of security can make a deal or break it. Vanta's AI and technology make it easy for fast-moving startups to get ready to meet buyer expectations in just a few days. Vanta's technology continuously monitors your compliance so your deals are never blocked. And our listeners get a special $1,000 discount when they sign up. Just go to vanta.com/superhuman. That's VANTA.com/superhuman.
I'll layer in a couple more things. One is that we call this a 3-speed problem, meaning that discovery, build, and go to market has been sort of in detente for the last 20 years, and mostly because of the speed of development itself. But as the speed of development goes from 1 to 10x, um, we're seeing that equilibrium is shrinking. And so you're seeing a broader reconfiguration of how software is built. The frontier, people like inventing new stuff, lovable and so on and so forth. Even in the enterprise, these things, the speed will change. And so you're going to see a reconfiguration. People will do different things. People that used to just code and people do PM, there'll be a blend of some of these things. Because it's really not about what people do and their titles. It's about the capabilities. You see PMs write more code because it's easier to do that. You see dev managers do a slightly more product management in the middle of like the build process itself. And so what you're seeing is a period of uncertainty, reconfiguration. And companies are not seeing that, and sometimes they're binary, like, oh, we need fewer product managers, or we need less of this and more of this. They're seen as a broad reconfiguration. And let's talk about it through time as well. I mean, it's an uncertain time. We have new ordnance, new technology in the market with maybe 5 or 6 different capabilities that didn't exist at scale before. And, frontier companies like Microsoft are running ahead of us. Startups from YC are running ahead, and they're just diving in natively AI at the core. Enterprises are figuring out, okay, how do we use this stuff downstream? And there's a lot of uncertainty. Executives on boards are demanding a vision, demanding a point of view. So in times of uncertainty, companies make mistakes all the time. They fire the wrong people, they click on projects that they are going to be regretful of at some point. And there are ways, I'm just saying it's an uncertain time, and I think we're seeing that, and that's where the anxiety is coming from, and people are making either good or bad decisions about what managers they keep or the partners they hire. So I think that's what we're seeing. But the fundamentals of the job aren't changing. Translating software to something that people love and that makes money is still something that product managers uniquely do, and they will continue to do.
And when we say product managers, we also mean founders, builders, etc., just for what it's worth.
Yeah, both of you said some really fascinating things there. Ezinne, first, you talked about judgment. I think PM is one of the most unique positions within the company. I do a lot of PM work day-to-day basis on one of our products because similar to being a CEO for the company, I feel like it's the only position where I constantly need to decide what needs to be built instead of like how it needs to be done. Because when I often talk to engineers, designers, a lot of it is about, how are we going to build this thing? But the, sort of like carrying the bag for what actually needs to be done and sort of like having the responsibility for the success and the failure of this thing always kind of like comes to me for every feature, for every sort of like almost like PR that we're pushing. So judgment is one word that has come up repeatedly. I think people also talk about taste. It's been a big word on Twitter and just the general conversation is having good taste. Do you think good judgment and good taste are the same thing? Are they a different thing? And how would you sort of like, narrowly define these things?
So I think that probably these words come from people's backgrounds. I think that, and they actually do mean different things. I think taste usually has to do with more of the emotional aspect and leans more towards the customer. Okay. It is I think it's usually tied to the user experience. And that usually comes from a deep understanding of the customer, watching them, not listening to them. We all talk about this. And I think this is even more important today. I think most people think that AI has accelerated customer understanding because now you can read interviews, etc. But the reality is that people say a lot of stuff that is not true. Not because they intend to lie, it's just that they don't know much about themselves. I was talking to somebody the other day about customer intimacy. And one of the reasons in the user research world, ethnographic research is really good is that you observe the customer. So I really implore people who are looking to be the taste makers in this day and age to not rely on the AI reading and conversational, summarization that occurs, but really ask themselves, what does it take to truly understand the customer and develop intimacy? And how can you study behavior? That's critical. And I think taste usually comes from there. And the types of decisions around this is, whoa, Oji and I refer to in our book as the idea of simplicity. And simplicity is actually really complex. I think that simplicity comes from intimacy and courage, really being able to make a decision on what you will present to the customer. Okay. Judgment, on the other hand, when it comes to product, I think leans more towards the business, understanding the unit economics, understanding operations in your organization, understanding your industry. And I think, this is just me this is how I present it to you. Doesn't mean that there are parental definitions out there, but when I hear people talk about these two things, that's usually where it comes from. Judgment around priority, trade-off, right? What to do, what not to do, when to do it. So that's usually whether it's Reddit or Twitter, etc., I see people come at it from these, but you need both. You need a full understanding of your business, your industry, the costs, right, of a developer, whether this particular project is worth doing, and if the outcome will be will deliver ROI. And on the other hand, this thing I'm building, is it going to be tasteful? Is it going to be appreciated? Does it actually lead to better adoption because I have taken away the confusion and made it simple for a customer to pick or select? So again, my perspective doesn't mean that it's the authoritative perspective, but I think one that comes from experience.
No, I wanna spike the ball. Judgment is a broader word because product managers and people who build, I don't want to just get into product managers. We have to think about a lot of things. Our job is really to maximize customer love and money. Okay. And in between that is the human plant that innovates to get that done. And it's not just developers and designers, some product marketers, data people, AI experts, user research, and so on and so forth. Judgment is big. It is how to orchestrate all of that wisely, right? How to think about what to do. Taste is the version of judgment that projects to the customer love, right? And I want to introduce another concept, which is the idea that the fundamental use of technology is to make people's lives better, whether it's at work or at play. Part of that is reducing cognitive load, meaning that if you offer everyone all the options all the time, it might seem like power to you, but it's basically mental inundation. So taste is about giving them a better, more powerful workflow without burning them with all the options. So make smart decisions for them. So I think when we think about taste, we think about Steve Jobs. It's like he takes away stuff so your life will be better. And so we need to be all better at that.
Yeah, great point. Sometimes I wonder if the extreme outliers are the best examples. Like obviously Steve Jobs is like the epitome of like having great taste. But I think the average person can't just look at the
Be Steve
customer and
Jobs.
just like YOLO it from scratch. Same things when people talk about Elon Musk and give these examples. I think obviously you should study the greats and learn from them. But I'm just like, I also just feel like he's a freak of nature. He can work like 20 hours a day, only sleep for 4 hours. I don't think I'm humanly capable of these things.
No, that's why I talked about the principle. Like when I would teach PMs, Ezinne and I, we say, how do you reduce cognitive load? Right? How do you make smart decisions for them so they don't have to? That is also the product, is when you do that. And I think that early on in people's careers as PMs, they don't see that enough as part of their core job. And you might miss, how do you make great taste? You make great taste by doing taste and getting feedback on your taste. And then you get it better and better, right? And then you can become legendary eventually. Steve Jobs didn't approach taste as he wasn't great at taste when he started probably, but he got better. Listen.
Let me make it really practical, right? I sit next to Oji. Oji sits next to me. So one of the things I notice whenever we're doing a design review is that we ask the core question, like, what are the options you're presenting, right, in the user flow? What are the options? Why are you presenting these options? And what would most people select? And how do you then take everything else away? I think that's a very practical way in which we do our core design like these, because many times people just leave options because they're afraid to present the
To take
most
a point of view.
thing. their strong point of view. And when you take all that noise away and continue to do that with every screen, every choice, you end up with a simpler, more powerful thing that 80% of people can use. But at the bottom, right, you see the option to go down another trail, should you so choose.
Before we move on, a quick message from our friends and partners at Vanta. Startups move fast, and with AI, they're shipping even faster. That means startups are attracting enterprise buyers even earlier, and the right kind of security can make a deal or break it. Vanta's AI and automation make it easy to meet buyer expectations in just days. Their technology continuously monitors your compliance so your deals are never blocked. With AI changing regulations, Vanta knows what's needed and when. And they've built the fastest and easiest path to get you there. Listeners of our show get a special $1,000 discount when they sign up. Just go to vanta.com/superhuman. That's VANTA.com/superhuman. Oji, earlier in the conversation, you mentioned that AI is top of mind for a lot of companies. We're seeing a big wave of new startups come in that are AI native, but for established startups and established large companies and big companies, CEOs are under pressure from their boards, from their market, they're under pressure from their boards, from the markets, that they need to do something about AI, that they need to have AI in their products, that they need to do AI, whatever that means. So the CEO comes to the product manager, head of product, and says, hey, we need to have an AI strategy. We need AI in our product over the next quarter. So what advice are you giving to the PM or the head of product that needs to, magically do AI in the next 3 months?
So, in a month or so, actually less than a month, we are going to industry, which is a major product management conference, and we're going to talk about this. We call it the three. I already talked about the 3-speed problem, but one of the ways I'll introduce the topic is this sort of particularly humorous way where a CEO vibe codes a feature and then asks the team, like, well, if I could do it, why can't you do it much faster? If that makes any sense. And the advice is sort of twofold, or actually is manyfold, but I'll tell them the steps that we use. Number one is we want PMs, first of all, to start from the beginning. They need to understand what, AI is not magical. It's statistical math in a neural network. And we always advise people, first of all, to go read the fundamentals, the original 2017 paper on intention, to start there. And then we want to tell them about capabilities. Like, what are the fundamental capabilities that have been unlocked that didn't exist in AWS before, for example? And so things like personalization, agentic capabilities, which is sort of like being able to spawn a human to go do things for you, or summarization, or being able to deal with data in different ways that are completely new, which is the foundation of all of this stuff. They need to understand that. Then the third step, frankly, is given the workflow they've built or the workflow that their company attacks, and they think about these new capabilities. How do these new capabilities, if you were to reimagine the changing or building this workflow again with these new capabilities, what would it look like? And this is one of the things we call building with AI at the core. When you really pivot your thinking to these new capabilities exist, if I had to start now, what would I do? Right? Now you get to it, because we believe AI at the core really is using models to their maximum capabilities. Like, we see companies like Lovable and other we consult with, they're building new things with about 50% model assumption, right? And that's what they're doing. And so people do one of a couple of things. They build with AI at the edge. They take everything they've built and they sprinkle AI. Sometimes they can do it very smartly. Just to be clear, this is one of the things we did at Typeform. Or they can start from scratch. And a lot of what's going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years is people who are making that decision. Should we sprinkle it in and do it at the edge? Or should we do it at the core? And frankly, you need both. And part of the judgment piece is finding ways to make this business grow fast and crossover with this business so that you don't get disrupted yourself, if that makes any sense. So to summarize this all is to say, your customers will probably remain the same. Your workflow, your target will remain the same because that's already market opportunity you've known. But you need to reimagine what you do with these new capabilities. And if you can think about it that fundamentally, you can come up with a AI strategy that will please your CEO, that will be maybe urgent enough to please your CEO. We went in and did this sort of workshop with fullstory.com. We've worked with a company like Logrecord and a few others. And we sat down with their CEO, by the way, the same kind of CEO, and the executive PM leadership. And we said, let's reimagine this. And this is actually the thing that's happening now with the next set of products is from that reimagining. And so you can do it, but you have to go through that kind of process.
Great answer. As in any strong opinions or things you want to add on to that?
I think I just want to underscore this idea of AI at the edge and AI at the core. And I think you said, hey, CPO comes to you. What do you say? I think you have to broker and agree that you're going to do both, right? And make sure you have enough space to tell your board or CEO that you need to be able to do both. One, because of the urgency that you understand, and the second, because you want to do something strategic. And also underscore, it's important to really break down and break apart the capabilities that are in AI. I think when people think about AI as a monolith, it's really hard to know how to innovate, right? But once you're able to break it down into its core constituent components, then it's much easier to figure out, okay, where in the workflow should I add this if I'm doing AI at the edge? Or if you're reimagining your entire product, it's easier when you can break it down into its constituent capabilities.
Great, great. I recently had a conversation with someone on Google's product team, and they said something very interesting, which is when they have the search bar at the top of the page, people use it more as like a keyword, maybe search thing. Like that's how people treat that. But when they have the search bar at the bottom of the page, people treat that as chat. Maybe it's just because we've used so many products that we've sort of like, come to do things this way. But the core of my question is basically around what are like the interesting UI UX experiences that we're seeing in AI right now. I mean, chat seems to be the dominant thing. It always strikes me as interesting as, like I grew up on the internet when MSN Messenger and Yahoo Chat were sort of like the big thing. And, it's surprising how much, like Slack and ChatGPT look the same. Obviously the design is a little bit more polished, but the interaction at the end of the day kind of feels very similar. Obviously, ChatGPT is a more powerful product, but it still feels like the same core interaction that's happening. Do you think chat is going to be the dominant sort of UI UX paradigm for AI, or do you think we're going to see some new paradigm emerge in the near future?
So I'm very opinionated about this. Um, at Product Mind, and even the book, we don't believe chat will be the dominant interface. And I think it's a really simple reason. If chat would have been the dominant interface, then DOS would have won, and terminal Windows would have won. But we know that those interfaces are things developers love and regular humans don't, because there's a lot of cognitive load. Think about it, like even ChatGPT is underutilized because it's chat. You have to come up with a prompt that is very smart to utilize the power of these things. And that's just not what humans, it taxes the human brain. Like people want to see technology as like electricity. You press and, a genie comes out. So I think we're betting that it's not. And some of the user experiences we're innovating in Phalanx are Chat Plus. I'll also say that, to the point of the person you talk to, we walk in search and interfaces a lot. In fact, I have some UI patterns, but like there are more decisions than up or down, right? Like people scan left to right. Like if you change the size of the block at the top, we've slimmed it down because of the menu, and it's very tiny. It's at the top, but even if you change the size of it, even at the top, people would treat it differently. If you put some prompts in it, right? Some prompts before people start typing, they would change without necessarily changing the location of it. So people do have cognitive patterns that they understood. And designers and product people need to understand that if you want to shift that, then you have to get clever. You need to co-opt the brain and how the brain understands it with the size, with the prompt, with the location. There are maybe like 10 different decisions you can make without necessarily changing location. And it's not either one of those. We believe that with enough clear thinking and enough experimentation, we can steer people to both a text interface and a visual interface in combination. At Typeform, we experimented also voice, and we let people pick between them whatever was convenient for them. And I think that was smart because not everyone comes. The 8 billion of us, we don't all come at this with the same biases. So that's what I think.
I try to watch a lot of people using AI products. Again, like some of my work is, PMing on the product that we're building in house. I'm noticing more and more people using voice now. So the moment where it hit me, like, oh, like, Meta might be slightly underestimated in this entire thing is now that my parents are both using Meta AI on WhatsApp. So again, because again, I use a little bit of WhatsApp, but that's sort of like, not where I predominantly spend most of my time. My parents do. For them, like they almost treat their group chats like the Facebook feed. So, I saw them and I was like, that's interesting. And what I've noticed recently a lot is I've seen people start using, using ChatGPT, both the app and both when I'm at the office. I see people using voice a lot more, and it feels like voice is going to be one of the most interesting things going forward, right? Because I think when people think about design interactions, you're mostly thinking about pixels on a screen, not necessarily like the way of inputting things. What I wanted to sort of ask you specifically is, okay, chat is maybe like seems like the dominant design UI UX
At least for
pattern,
right now. Yeah.
at least for right now. Is there anything else different out there that you've seen that we should be paying attention to?
Let's just do a quick inventory. In our contemporary lifetimes, people have tried pen writing. People have tried voice, which actually up to this time has really failed spectacularly. Definitely there's text and command line, and then there is visual stuff you can click. I think that gesture hasn't really borne out because it's not fine grained.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it will be at some point, but I don't think that's a thing. So I think we're going to be stuck with voice, clicking, and
And tech.
writing, right?
Yes.
In combination. We will
Yeah.
see that. Voice actually has been so difficult. I was working on voice technology at Microsoft 20 years ago. And I think the only reason it's a thing now is that LLMs are forgiving. Like, if they don't understand you, they'll interpolate and still get to the core, just like a human does. And before, machine learning wouldn't do that. It would just be wrong. And I think it's more forgiving. So I think if voice becomes more forgiving for tone, accent, level of audio, you'll see people use those three things. I use Siri now. I've had Siri for 10 years or whatever, how long it is. This is the first year that I've talked to Siri confidently. I never talked to Alexa. I hated it. And I still don't because it's not good. But I talk to Siri now because I can say full sentences instead of commands, and it sort of tries to understand me. And I think it's going to get better. So we'll see people use all three. I don't think there'll be a clear winner. We're really not like whatever lets people dump their brain and their creativity into computers impedance match is what will win. And we don't think that text is there yet, isn't it? You wanted to say
Yeah,
something.
no, I think this question comes up often, and I think it's one we can actually put to bed in many ways, because I do think that the input method is going to be contextual. AI will be used in GUI, dashboards, etc. It just depends on what the use case is, and there are many. However, for conversational and to get from a human using I think Oji has nailed it. It's going to be multimodal, and it's going to be voice, text, image. How I don't know how you get an image into things, but getting an image in and then clicking. There'll be gestures, etc., but it has to be in the context of VR, AR, and if those do not become popular, then that will not become popular. If those we build use cases and workflows that put you in those immersive experiences, then gestures will become important, but it's very use case dependent. The other thing I wanted to actually share here is that part of why I think I saw Audrey move, because I used Echo, all the things, is that the rate at which we want to dump our ideas, right, into this thing that can move quickly, AI, is increased. So nobody wants to stay and put and type all the things that are coming to you down via text. So I do think
Yeah.
that there'll be much more of an increase in voice, because the time it takes to text stuff, to write it, is just ridiculous. And
It
as
becomes a
AI
limiter.
is responding back to you and give you, like, you're thinking, so we're thinking faster. And when we think faster, it is cumbersome to actually try to type your thoughts. And that's why I see a lot of people move more into using voice. And Oji nailed it when he says, the faster you can dump what's in your head into this sidekick you now have, which is AI, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where that's what's going to drive the inputs and output.
Let me offer something just extra to your guests. One of the things in the user experience, in the user visual stuff, the most developed organ in the body is visual. Like our ability to see and to recognize things from small snippets is super. Like that's where everyone is a Superman. Most people actually. And I would say that what's going to happen in GUI, as we predict, is dynamic GUI, meaning that you only see the GUI that you need, and it will be personalized to you out of 8 billion people. And I think that right now we are sort of in the primitive ages of user experiences with, web interfaces. They just show us the same thing to 8 billion people. But what will happen is that your user experience will be different from mine. It'll be just mine. It'll match my brain, that kind of personalization. I think that's coming.
Cool. I want to zoom out a little bit from like the details of the UI, UX, and design patterns up to like the high level stuff. Vibe coding is here. I'll have a question about a little bit later on, but seems like we'll be able to produce software a lot faster and replicate it a lot faster, whether that's vibe coded or non-vibe coded. So in a world where maybe software engineering is not the bottleneck anymore, the amount of code that you can produce is no longer the bottleneck, and features can get replicated quickly, products can get replicated quickly. What's the moat or differentiator for products going forward? Are we thinking like GTM, distribution, things like those, like, or brand? Like, what's your gut center on that stuff?
Not to talk about our book, but to talk about the book,
No,
we actually
please
talk
go ahead.
about we talk about competitive moats. And again, this book is about fundamentals. There are going to be many things that come and go, but there are a few things that are fundamentals. And we try to share as much of what we understand to be the fundamentals that will be applicable no matter what the technology is. And like you said, there are a couple of things that are truly moats, right? It's distribution, right? Economies of scale, network effects. And I know these were overused, but really stepping back and thinking about what is it that I'm building right now and how might I apply? I think we have about 7 core strategic moats, right? And also ways of driving revenue. I think those are the types of things that we really want people to implore folks to study. Because like you said, anything can be replicated. First mover advantage was one that most people talked about a lot, and it's not because first mover advantage, it wasn't because they moved first. Most times, if you really studied the folks, it's that they built a moat by moving first, right? They built something, whether it was they were able to capture the audience that was necessary to build a two-sided marketplace, which then drove network effects, right? So it's understanding the core thing. And we talk about, I think there's 7. I don't know. Do you remember what they
Yeah,
are?
it's intellectual property, not necessarily secrets and patents, but intellectual property. There's economies of scale. There's
Economies of
economies of
scale,
scope. There is
distribution, distribution,
distribution.
money,
There is
having more money than anybody else, a war chest,
access to capital,
capital.
right? For example. But I think I'll jump in and say it's important for people to understand that there are, builders, especially early stage or maybe even executives that work in technology, think of building advantage in the product itself. And in that space, what we've learned is that the only advantage you can really have is the advantage of understanding your customer better than your competitors do. Because I'm ex Microsoft, I used to tell people that I have the playbook to to beat Microsoft, and the reason is just stay clear of their biggest advantage, which is their distribution. Stay clear of their sales team. Work in every place that doesn't go head to head with the office sales team, right? And then understand your customer, and then you can win. But if you go up against the office sales team, you're probably gonna lose, even if you do understand the customer a little better. So understand your customer, and don't go up against someone who can kill that advantage, right? That's at Calendly, we built a product that other people had built. We were in the shadow of Microsoft and Google, with calendaring empires and Salesforce, and we still thrived because we understood our customers better than they did. And that's very important. But beyond that, if you work in a competitive area where people can replicate your development, your actual software, then build your competitive advantage in non-product ways. Have the best sales team, have the best relationships, like with your customer, have the best, like you have other places where you can build advantage that they don't build just because they can match you in software. And that's what you have to do.
Great. And since we're on the subject, do you want to quickly plug your book as well so readers can find it?
Right. The book behind me right now is Building Rocket Ships. Actually, beside it is Tony Fadell's signed copy of Build. But Building Rocket Ships is a book which it's called Product Management for High Growth Companies. And it's a very important book because it encapsulates almost 50 years of product management for me and Ezinne across our careers. And book one is about all the fundamentals, starting from why product managers exist, the simplicity that we need to build, and all the way to pricing, which is a very advanced topic, actually. And the second part of the book two, is about how do you lead high performing teams to
Incredible.
consistently build great outcomes, not just for the product, but for the business itself. Because we say that, a technology company is a three-layer cake. It's software, it's product, and it's business. And, at a certain level of leadership, you need to be able to do all three really well. So book two is about that. And that's where we talk about competitive advantage, the 10 growth levers, how to manage a shipyard, how to think about artificial intelligence, which is what we started off with. And then the most important thing is, there's a pro version of the book, which is digital. And Ezinne drove this exciting project of creating content, almost as much content as the book, where each chapter has actionable. We turn it into a verb. It has templates, it has checklists, it has deep insight on how to take each chapter and make it work for your company, for your team. And it's suitable for every form, from senior product managers to chief product officers, even CEOs and CFOs. We need to understand and partner with CPOs. This is a great read, we believe.
A little bit of a selfish question as a follow-up to this. So I'm someone who's mostly built my career just through like reading books. I've never been big on networking and those things. It always made me a little bit uncomfortable. So, I read, a lot of the early texts like Design of Everyday Things, Built by Tony Fadell, a few other, books on product management. And that's how I taught myself how to do these things. And then, working with Figma and a few of these other things. Um, what are some things you think, if someone is starting out in product management today or is sort of like a non-trained product manager like me, what are some good resources, books, or courses you think I should be looking at?
Actually, I don't want to recreate, or to be frank, there are tons. If you go to LinkedIn, a few people we respect have actually built some of this already. Oji, I don't know if you remember the last one, but one of the places, obviously we say read our book.
Yeah, of
That's a
course.
selfish plug. But quite frankly,
I
I'm a
don't think I don't think you should sleep on reading our book. I mean, the reason we wrote this book is because we thought a lot of the product advice was super entry level. It's like the build part.
Yep.
Oh, it's either customer discovery and then how to run teams. Like, it didn't feel comprehensive, and there is no university for this stuff. And product management turns out to inevitably be sort of like a internship or apprenticeship.
apprenticeship.
Like, we see product managers who have been product managers for 10 years, but because they had bad teachers, they're not very good.
Mhm.
And so we wrote this book because we don't think that best product managers should be ghettoed in the West Coast of the United States. We see people all over the world. India, I just got back from India 8 weeks ago. Nigeria, South Africa. We think that it feels like we got special knowledge through our careers and we want to spread it. Like, we are going to open source this book, in a short while. Actually, book one, the first part of it, because we really want product managers to be better. We want people to know this. So isn't it going to continue? But I wanted to plug that you should read this. It's one of the better product management books for people who started out like you out there, it'll give you sort of the breath you need. Actually, I believe that. Isn't it? You can talk about other people, but I
I
wanted
mean,
to stand on 10 toes
no,
on,
so frankly, I'll
on
talk
the
about people
book.
it actually is a matter of people I respect out there, to be frank.
Hmm.
I think the Bill Trap is really interesting, and it's actually
The
even
Bill
more
Trap
by
is good.
Melissa
Melissa is a
Perry.
good friend. Yeah.
Is that she's also a friend now. We met in product, and the reason it's important is that with AI, people are going to be building tons of things, tons, right? And it's even more. It's really critical that you actually have the judgment and figure out, okay, why am I building this? I have a lot of respect for Teresa Torres, who talks about customer discovery, right, and interviewing customers. But like I said earlier on in this, I think it really is different listening to what a customer says than observing. And sometimes if you can't observe your customers, there are experts in your company who are either construction workers, et cetera, and they can give you deep insights that no matter, even if you listen to 100 hours of tape, right, you just won't get from a customer because they have lived it. So you
Yep.
learn it from watching them work or somebody sharing, man, when I take off my shoes at the end of the day, this is how I felt. And here's why I felt the way I did. I'm heading to Rwanda in a couple of weeks to work with Christian Idiodi and Marnie Kagan on SVPG. So they're very well respected. I think that their flavor of product management and things they do. One of the reasons we wrote the book was there is an assumption sometimes of how it should work and in these good companies. But the reality, I would say that 90% of companies are not those companies, right? The CEOs do not understand product. It is not native. So we wanted to start from the very beginning, the very best place to start, according to Sound of Music, right? And that's really where why we wrote the book. So we respect a lot of these folks and follow the Shreyases of the world, the Martin Erickson. I really like Martin Erickson because he's been through stuff. He recently talked about change management as it pertains to really getting the companies moving in the same direction. And he had a very interesting insight about how the reason strategy may fail in moving from strategy to execution is because people adopt their understanding of your strategy at different degrees. And he brought in this idea of crossing the chasm, right? And
Yep.
how in crossing the chasm, they're early adopters and then they're laggards. So whenever you have a strategy within a company and you're trying to get people to move forward, and Zane, I'm going to say this to you even as a leader of a company, you're going to shout and tell people what to do and how to do it and why you're doing it. You're going to tell 10 people, but only one gets it on day one, right?
Of course.
Another three may get it on month one. Then there are a few others, right? Maybe five of them. Month three is when they're beginning to even understand what it is you just said. And then the rest,
Yeah.
a year later, are asking, sorry, why did we do what we did? And that is just the way communication around strategy works. So I really appreciated Martin Erickson's insight there. And he's one person to follow as well. I think I'll end there, but when it comes to resources, the book is good. I loved Eric Ries's book. I think it was really a good introduction to what it means to build venture scale. And then, Audrey, what's our professor's name?
The four
Steve
steps to
Blank.
the Steve Blank's book. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an
The
interesting
startup owner's manual or something like that.
manual. That's a
Oh,
very
yes, I've read that
interesting.
one early on. Yeah, I read that one
Yeah.
Yeah.
very, very
Yeah.
early on. Yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, if you don't study history, right, you're doomed to repeat, particularly the bad aspects of it. So I'm one of those souls that want to understand what happened, and then I can chart my course. I mean, yeah, I can chart a path forward based on that, having learned from others. In this AI world, who do I follow and what do I like? Who are the folks that we talk to? I mean, I'm on Reddit all the time just trying to figure out what's
No,
up.
I think it's super early. Like there are some interesting voices. Akash does some
Akash,
cool things
Yes,
around
I follow
like
him. Yes.
giving, and Lenny is also very practical. All right, and
Lenny
he's
is
putting
very
out a lot of
practical.
AI content. I think the sum of this is like forever. Product management is not a thing you can go to school to get. And so the best advice we give people is find what Ray Dalio calls believable people and then study them.
Yeah.
follow them. And if they put out something like our book or whatever, then read those. That's what you should do. There's a lot of like snake oil out there, but like you have to find believable people. That's important.
Awesome. Just a couple of quick questions and then we can wrap up. Vibe coding, another hot topic, right? We're hearing everything from, people who are building incredible things with vibe coded things, and then we're hearing about incredible disasters as well that have been vibe coded, especially for enterprise and bigger companies. So where are you landing on vibe coding? Is this something that engineers and product managers should be dabbling with, or should they be staying clear of this?
We actually did, the product mind partners. Ted is not here, but we actually have started recording and writing. So if you go to Substack, you'll see stuff like I think we wrote something about vibe coding. But the TLDR is people who believe in vibe coding like the zeitgeist don't really understand software development because it's incredibly hard. I think you can vibe code like a little like garden shed, but if you want to build the Empire State Building of code, then it's very, very difficult. And the reason is super simple. It's not denigrating vibe coding. It is that software is iterative. You first understand a sharp problem from the customer, you reduce it to a design, right? An interaction, not just a design, something living and breathing, because that's what interaction is. And then you write it, the software, and then you put it out in front of customers, and the customer will either love it or hate it. And if they love it, which is the best version of it, they'll say, this part doesn't really work. This part doesn't work. And then you have to take it and you have to change it. And the
Yeah.
thing about vibe coding as it is today is that it's good for a first draft, it's good for a prototype, but it's not yet doesn't yet respect the living and breathing changing that software is. Like the reason you have a dev team is things change and they can handle it. They can absorb the feedback. Otherwise, why is there customer discovery and why is there customer listening, which are core parts of product? So I think people who sort of lionize this don't understand the enterprise of how iterative software is, because vibe coding isn't fundamentally as iterative. It will be in the future, but at least today it's not. And so, yes, vibe code. In fact, we tell people stop writing PRDs. Instead, they should just like the prototype is the PRD because you cut out so many meetings. So part of what we do as PMs is translate the interaction to other people to build, and we document and we sit in meetings for a month, right? Do the first thing, vibe code it, and that's your PRD, and then wrap a few words around it, and you do that in a week because
Yeah.
developers understand that, and the designers understand, and it could go faster if they see the vision. But I don't know if you should pretend that this is the thing that you should put in front of customers. Maybe not yet. And so that's how we see it. We see it as vibe coding is the worst it will ever be. Every day gets better. But it's not yet at a point where we should brag about the fact that we are pushing stuff to production that is bulletproof, supports GDPR, respects every security thing you should do, offers all the choice, and can change based on customer feedback. We just don't see it there yet.
Oh, vibe coding is here to stay. The same way you have SMB, right? Some companies that are they've been stood up and they're serving 100 customers and they're making money. Vibe code all the way. Please go for it, right? And then PMs, please use vibe coding to MVP and prototype. So that's kind of how we feel about it.
Yeah, we're currently working on actually working both on internally on a vibe coding product. So it's interesting because we need to come up against all these decisions. Like one of the biggest one is like we noticed early on in some of our testing is ideally you want to ask the user questions and come up with a nice PRD and then build something. But the problem is like users just want to be able to put something in a chat box, press click, and then do that. So like there's like this big trade-off with conversion. Another thing I noticed sort of like with these things is like there's so many dependencies and there's so much like sort of like pad dependency that's happening all the way. Like, you tell the app to build something and then it does certain sort of like, database design or builds a certain dependencies. And then you're like, no, actually I want this to be done. And there's, you're kind of like stuck in a back and forth loop and that's hard to do. And then there's other things like, I want a certain part of like the screen to be changed, but sometimes I don't have the language to say like this part of the screen where this is happening, like how do I change it? Like there's all these different issues. So I feel like the right interaction design probably needs voice. It might even need some sort of like touch in there. if that's possible, just to see, this area right here, I'm pressing it right now or clicking it right now. This doesn't feel right to me. Like, how do I do this? Again, it's a very fuzzy problem, and we're trying to solve it internally. My humble opinion is like voice definitely feels like it's there just because we're testing it internally quite a lot. And it's, number one, like the economics within the last couple of months feel like they work now. So now, we're able to internally build things where you can offer someone an hour of chat for $20 a month, and it actually like is you can sustain it from a unit economics basis, which I feel like is new, and we'll see a lot of people building around there. And another thing, at least that I feel as a user with voice, is which when I talk to ChatGPT via text, it's always at the back of my head that this is not a real human being, simply because the pace of typing is so fast that that no human can type this fast. So it always feels a little bit off to me. Whereas with voice, what I've noticed is, with a few things, I've been testing recently, like it feels natural. And even though it's AI, like now that every time I'm a week into testing like whatever new prototype we build, like you kind of forget that it's AI. Like you just feel like this is a real human that you're talking to, and sort of, sometimes you say things that you probably never thought that you'd be saying to a computer. So that definitely feels like, it's crossing into an interesting space. Couple final quick questions. A lot of practitioners are listening in right now. Folks who are officially in product management or folks who are like unofficially in product management and have to dabble with these things. What are some of your favorite AI tools that you're using for work, and how are you using them?
We believe in like you have to use all to figure out which one is better. So we're definitely using, whether it's Claude, OpenAI, we're using all ChatGPT, we're using those, but we see them as our sidekicks, right? Lovable is one. I think a lot of people feel a little, a few people, particularly maybe your audience, it's important to talk to them about this. Many people are not sure where to start. Okay. And they may feel like, oh my gosh, how do I even get into AI to fully understand it? And we tend to say, hey, find a passion project. Find that little thing that is bugging you in your home. Oji has so many projects that he has in our home that are all AI based. And build that, right? How about like if it's organizing your recipes, right? A mom there, or inputting all the schedules for your children and getting a recommendation on how to optimize traffic patterns. Find a problem that you need to solve for yourself, and then try and code that. I think that is usually what most people need to get a kick in the butt to actually use AI and fully understand it. Um, I think another tool, Aji kind of has, like he has a whole bunch of local. Go ahead, local LLMs that we that are
Yeah,
in the house.
we use Claude and ChatGPT a lot for like writing. Or by the way, I just before I say this, I want to preface this, and this involves vibe coding as well. Um, we think a lot of vibe coding actually will be used to make personal software. Like we're in the era of hyper personalized software. There'll be lots of software created that is not for other people or for businesses or for making money. So the one person SaaS is going to go away because software can be narrowcast to one person. Because right now, software development is basically any language, Telugu, English, doesn't matter, and some logic and architectural skills. And which goes to my second point. The way to use AI is not to tell it to do stuff for you, is you do stuff, show it to AI, and ask it to help you improve it. So when I vibe code, I do a lot of architectural work. I design components, how it should all interact, and because I know how to do that, Masters in Electrical Engineering, yay, yay, USC. And then I put it in front of the AI, and then I ask it to critique it and then to code it. And I always get better results than just prompting it to tell me to make it for me, if that makes sense. And then I can go from there. And I think it's a super good pattern for writing. If you don't do this, you get average results. But if you do this, you get better results. Your brain is augmented. So that's one thing. So we use Claude and ChatGPT for writing. We use Bolt. Think about all the things that product managers do. Things like Bolt,
Bolt.
uh, UX Pilot for user experience design. For websites, Framer Gamma, for example, for putting
Yep.
up like quick websites so that you can show people what you're working on. There's a huge amount of innovation in local open source
LLM.
AI.
Yeah.
So the ways to use that is use LM Studio and Olama. And then you go out to Hugging Face and other places to check out the models that suit you, whether it's a narrow model for coding, a model for writing, a model for healthcare. It doesn't really matter. And so these are the spaces I think that good PM should start, meaning that they should use these things every day and become expert. If I interviewed a PM that hasn't been doing some of these things, then I don't think they're very serious, if that makes sense.
Oji, Ezinne, I've tried to ask everything that I could think of, but there's so much more that I'm sure I haven't asked you. What are some things that are top of mind for you that you'd like to talk about?
One of the things that is top of mind right now, we actually, as partners at Product Mind, we're talking about the hype cycle, right? The trough of disillusionment and the implications of that. Right now, many people are probably seeing a lot of pullback with capital because there was a hype of what AI would deliver. People slapped stickers that just said company X AI dot AI in some way. And we hadn't done the work to actually ensure that this AI application was going to drive real return on investment. And I want to encourage folks that every time a new technology kind of goes through the typical Gartner's hype cycle, this is the moment where this slowdown, quote unquote, is really about filtering and finding the right uh, enduring technology, right? It's time to actually slow down. Ask for every application or investment that is being made, particularly for leaders, is this actually going to solve a problem? Is it going to generate real revenue? And actually do the math. Really sit down and do the math. And I think that this is a good time that leaders can truly show up and be not join the hype, but work, use judgment, and use discipline. AI is great. It will help with operational efficiency. There is zero doubt about that. I remember being in my organization and not having a business analyst to help me get data. And I'm so glad that whether it's a SQL query or whatever it is, I can actually turn around and build some of the dashboards that my teams can do. My PMs can now do that in ways that they never could. So we're moving faster than we ever have. So lean into that, right? And yep, there are people who are losing their jobs. I want to encourage you that they will come back. Many companies are simply just slashing because there's uncertainty. There's no, they don't know where to invest, where not to invest. But the reality is that when all is said and done, even where they are gaining operational efficiency, they will need the architects, the people who know the business, the people who know the workflow to then evolve the operations of the organization. So the job will be there, the tasks will change, but these opportunities will be recreated over time. So it's a bit weird right now. People are feeling bad, pulling back of capital, etc. But let's just be patient. This is a good time to really check out and ensure that we're doing things that solve problems, we're making investments that have a return, and that we are actually learning as much as we can and having intimacy with either the workflow that we're trying to drive operational efficiency for, or the customers with whom we're trying to solve problems for with AI. Yeah, I still have other thoughts, but let me send it over to Oji.
Yeah, a couple of things that are top of mind is one is we consider artificial intelligence, transformer technology, ordnance, meaning that it's very potent technology, and eventually for the human race, this might be more important than nuclear fusion weapons, if that makes sense. I mean, we're in a world where if my AI is better than yours, then I can win. Versus in the last 50 years, it's like, well, we both have guns and nuclear weapons, so we better not start anything. And
Yep.
so the world is changing dramatically. So what does that mean? For people like us who are using this every day and it's commonplace, we have sort of an ethical responsibility to try to think about the unintended consequences of what we do. I don't believe we thought about the unintended consequences through the social age. Twitter and Facebook and so on became good in some ways, but also like malignant to society and changing the minds of and the brains of people, especially young people. And I believe, because I was an executive at Twitter, that there are ways we should have done things more responsibly. And we're in the sort of maybe worst time with artificial intelligence, particularly the ability to personalize to each person of 8 billion people on the planet is scary. And so I encourage product managers who have the opportunity to make important things that millions of people use to think hard about the unintended consequences and the ethics of what they do. And they should handle it and be responsible for it. And then the last thing I want to say is I wanted to encourage builders to be courageous, to take some risk here. No one is a Picasso yet. Everyone is still figuring out how this art is painted. Even people around you who are like, oh, guffs and quantization, and oh, I can fine tune. Don't be afraid of them. Whenever you wake up is your morning, and so go for it. And and for people who are afraid of losing their jobs, oh, developers can do what I do. Don't do that. Don't go into a crouch. Be on the offense, right? You are the product manager. You see everything from what developers do to ethnographers do and to what the CFO does. Take their job from them, right? Write more code. Be the developer. Be the designer. Be the guy who does the numbers because he can prompt ChatGPT to do the numbers, so the CFO is out of a job. So I'm apologies to CFOs, but be on the offense, right? You see more, do more, all right? And then people can't deny the value that you produce. So that's what I wanted to say.
It's not over. Those who have high agency, high
It's still
ownership,
day one.
it's still day one. Lean in, and honestly, AI can supercharge you. That's the way to think about it. So whatever it is you're dreaming of, figure out how AI can actually supercharge and bring that to bear sooner and faster.
Wrap it up with a small anecdote is my dad, when he did his MBA, he got into a top Ivy League college and so on. And, he didn't have any back in the day, didn't have any GMATs or GREs or LSATs and all these extracurriculars. Like he just got good grades and he got in. And, I was talking to my dad and I was like, it was so easy back in the day for you guys. Like all you guys had to do was study and you guys got in. And that same thing happened to me recently. Like I was talking to someone who, started their career in the last couple of years and they're like, back in your day, you could just put crap on SEO and you'd kind of grow all the way. And now it's like so competitive and, you need to be constantly growth hacking and finding new channels everywhere. And like all of these big channels are tapped out. But, people are still winning. So, I think to your point about having high agency and having courage, like folks who have those qualities are always going to win no matter how easy or hard things are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Amazing. Before we wrap up, for folks who want to get in touch or work with you, where can they find you?
The first place is www.productmind.co. You can send us an email at hello@productmind.co. You can find us on Substack. We put out like articles about the evolving landscape of product management and artificial intelligence. We've started to do some, chop sessions that you can see on Spotify, YouTube as well. Go into audio. I said chop sessions. Chop sessions. We're not gonna give it the glorified name of podcast, but we put chop sessions where we're talking about these things. You can find it on Spotify and YouTube and just look for Product Mind. One of the major initiatives I'm working on is building Phalanx.studio, which is a venture fund that is a studio. We build 2 companies a year and we invest in about 5 to 7 on thesis with the capital that we have. And we're all in on artificial intelligence. We believe in the great replacement. No tool we use today will be the same we use in 10 years. And we want to build the generational companies that build those things.
Awesome. Oji, Ezinne, thank you so much for this. I hope the audience found this educational. Like it was super educational for me, and hopefully we'll have you here again soon.
Thank you so much. We loved being with you, and it was a great conversation.